This is TWiT.
Let's talk about what's happening to the iPad. I thought that was very interesting. They're literally calling it iPadOS now.
Yeah, and I think that is more a marketing thing than an actual engineering
It's still
distinction.
iOS, right, James?
Yeah. I mean, everything bar the Mac is iOS under there somewhere.
Yeah, they call it WatchOS, tvOS, iOS, iPadOS. It's all iOS.
But I think this is basically exactly iOS. You know, it's the same code that's running on the phone. It's just.
Does it say, I'm on an iPad, I'm going to do something different?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like apps.
You can't do those things on a phone, though.
No. But it's. I don't think that, somebody has taken the source for iOS and moved it into a separate room. This is.
Well, Apple was clear that it is iOS. They're creating not even a fork of it, but basically a superset of it, kind of like the way they used to talk about OS 10 being at the core of everything that they're doing. That Mac OS 10 is different from iOS, even though they have essentially the same stuff at the core. They just added stuff to iOS that a Mac doesn't need, and they've added stuff to Mac OS that iOS doesn't need. I thought but even if it is a change in name only, and I don't think that's necessarily true. That is a powerful statement, though, that you're targeting, instead of conceptually writing an app that could be, I'm generating code that could be for an iPad, it could be for iOS. Ideally, I'm creating one app that could transmogrify itself depending on what device it's on. The mindset of saying, no, I'm creating an app that's designed to exclusively take advantage of things that are special to the iPad, the larger size screen, the fact that the fact that split view works in pretty much everything, any other features they choose to come up with, the idea that in the future there might be special APIs or special app permissions that you can only get on an iPad OS app that you can't get on an iOS app. More than anything else, though, I think it really is a nod to how serious Apple is about promoting the iPad Pro as a real computer. That this is a statement that they can definitely defend. That anytime over the past 2 or 3 years that someone has complained that geez, Apple computers are only for people who can afford to buy luxury MacBooks and luxury desktops. They can very credibly say that, well, we do make really good $329 computers and really good $700 computers. They're just called iPads. So if all this is the ability to really get the entire community of users and developers to take this seriously, this is not just a movie, this is not just something for watching movies on, this is not just something for Instagramming or Facebooking, this really is something that you can take on a 3 or 4 day business trip and not just, again, entertain yourself on the flight, but actually get real work done. It doesn't look like much right now, but 2 years from now, if they decide to finally just admit it and add a pointing device, add a trackpad, or add an optional mouse to it, it will be absolutely more natural to make that an iPad OS exclusive than as something that could conceivably be misinterpreted as a feature that could work with an iPhone as well. Really interesting move.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it really frees Apple.
Go ahead, Jim, and
too.
then James. Yeah.
It felt before like Apple wanted to do something different with the iPad, but couldn't because they were kind of constrained with what people expected in iOS. But now that it's separate, they have the ability to go in and do some really great things with iPadOS for what that crowd wants, and make it different from iOS on the phone. And I think that's great. It's going to be a good thing because you'll have, features in macOS, you'll have features in iPadOS, and then features for truly mobile in iOS.
Apple did confirm after the event that it will support all iPads. It's not just for the iPad Pros, which is interesting. James, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, the stuff that they have introduced, the multiple Windows support and the sort of spaces and expose concepts coming over from the Mac. That's the interesting thing to me, and it makes a big difference. And
I felt like a lot of this stuff came from, and Andy, you're probably using Android P or Q.
Q.
Yeah. So a lot of this came over from Android Q. Dark mode. Google's been doing that gradually over time. The widgets.
Swipe keyboards.
Keyboards.
Well, just the idea of having a new home screen just for the iPad, so long in coming, and it will be such a big deal.
This was ridiculous. The amount of wasted territory on an iPad with that same home screen grid you'd see on an iPhone was insane. Now, do we know, it says pin your favorite Today View widget on the home screen. Do we know if they can only live on the left? Can they live on multiple screens? Do we know anything about that? Jim, were you able to play with the iPadOS at all?
I was not. No,
yeah. You were too busy staring at that Abbey Road demo.
Yeah.
I have a feeling you were mesmerized for hours.
I just stood there and looking at it and asking questions.
James, have you seen anything that indicates?
No, I mean I've like run virtual iPads, but I didn't even think to check about the widget stuff. I was just trying to get all my code working again.
So you have downloaded iOS 13 Developer Preview.
Yeah, I've got that, and I've got Catalina installed and the new Xcode and things like that.
Are you allowed in days gone by? You couldn't talk about it if you had it, but I think now they've removed that, right?
I don't think if I say anything that's covered by the keynote and the State of the Union, that's usually fine. Yeah. But to be honest, Apple, I think, has not really cared for many years.
Especially since there's a public beta coming in a couple of months, right? I mean,
but you never know when they will start caring again.
Yeah,
you don't want to be that one.
Yeah.
Well, that is true.
Like in Russia, they don't care that you've been bribing public officials. They're counting on it. But if they decide you need to be put in jail and your money taken away, suddenly they charge you with bribing a public official. Yes.
I'm glad we have a better screen layout. Looks like you can really get a lot of icons into this grid now, which is great. Making room for widgets from the Today View, which is really nice as well. Yeah. I use that on Android all the time. But there are really no good Android tablets, so this will be a different experience. Pencil has a lot of very nice new features, which is good because that's one of the things that's unique. They didn't mention mousing, but Renee Ritchie did go backstage and was able to confirm that, yes, as we had thought, the mouse support in the iPad is in accessibility. So now he didn't mention trackpad, so we know at least mouse support. He also said full keyboard control for the entire UI, which I really liked. So you have 3 different ways now that you can control the UI with mouse, full keyboard controls, which for me is very important. I actually work in command line a lot. I don't want to put my hand even on a mouse, let alone touch the screen. So keyboard control is really important to me. And they showed off the voice control. And that was very impressive as well.
But we should point out that I think it's really significant that they put all that stuff that could be transformative for the iPad, and they put it in accessibility, which is places where it's not just a convenience for someone like me. It is a feature for people who could not make full use of the thing. Yeah. But the thing they gave a spotlight on was the one part of their iPad section that kind of got me confused. In that, yes, we're all sort of really, really hungry for give us mouse support, give us some sort of trackpad support, and say, good news, we listen to you, and here are new triple finger taps to get to move and cut and paste text. It's like, okay, I absolutely don't care. If I'm going to be, it's so hard to remember all of these new like multiple finger taps if I'm going to be doing text manipulation of that kind, I'm probably going to have a keyboard in front of me. This is the sort of stuff that's so dead easy if you've got a mouse or a trackpad. Again, it's for people who use that feature and take advantage of it, it's going to be great, and I don't begrudge that, but it seems like a step backward to say, here's another opportunity for you to take your hands off of the keyboard you're using, or another opportunity to do something in a way that's hard to remember and it's going to take a while to learn before it becomes intuitive, when we really just want, let us do more stuff with a pencil. Let us do when we don't have another sort of input device. And then when we do have another sort of input device, make sure the keyboard works amazingly well for selecting and moving stuff, and give us a mouse finally.
Jim, you were in the keynote, right?
Yes.
You must have felt for Toby Peterson, the Apple engineer, when he just couldn't get those gestures working. He said, oops, sorry, oh, no. And
it happens in every demo.
It has to happen. That's what demos do. And yet,
I mean, I wouldn't like to stand up there in front of 5,000 people and demo something. I could be nervous in that situation as well.
It also, though, shows how, it's very identifiable. It happens to me all the time. I'm trying to do swipe and stuff, and it's feels finicky and fussy. And I don't know if they fixed that.
Trying to do it all on a piece of beta software.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's true.
To say nothing of the fact that we don't know, like maybe it worked one way with one set of gestures up until 4 days ago,
right? And
he had committed that to muscle memory. That's a level of hell that's only reserved for people who are really horrible in a previous life.
Okay, so we'll just take it for granted. I agree with you, Andy. Sometimes these gestures are very hard, or they're not discoverable. They're hard to remember, and maybe they don't ever get used again. But it's nice that they put them in there. I mean, how many fingers am I going to have to use here? Go ahead, James.
I think there's also some of it is, we've grown up with using keyboards and, our Command C, Command V shortcuts for 30 plus years. I don't want to think about the number. And, there are people growing up who are more used to tablets than they are to using keyboards and things.